I've talked to you before about how I never know what I'm going to find on the Dorchester car boot sale, and this is another example. And I found this a few weeks ago and I didn't know much about it. Yes, I know the German name of Braun and that they were camera manufacturers, and they produced the Paxette PAX, and which were originally rangefinder cameras in the 1950s, and in the late 50s, early 60s they started making SLRs. This is I think from about 1962, and it's called Paxette Reflex, and it's an interesting camera for all sorts of reasons. First of all, where do I start? I'm going to start with how you load the camera, because you have to release this part here and there, normal 35mm cassette in here to over here. So that's nice and straightforward, very normal, right? What I wasn't sure to begin with was how you actually set the aperture and shutter on this camera. We have a meter here, and the meter seems to operate, but I couldn't work out how to, and I could work out how to set my shutter speeds here, that was quite obvious, but how to set my aperture, which is here, because there's no switch there for the aperture. However, on top is a little turny thing. When I turn that, it will turn the needle. Well, the needle is floating here, and the indicator here moves until it matches the needle, and as it's doing that, you can see the aperture is changing. So once the needle matches the red, then you've got your aperture. So you decide on your shutter speed first, and then you set your aperture accordingly. The focusing is through the lens, which is a very nice feature. It's a come-through shutter, and this is typical of this type of camera, which the shutter is in the lens here, although if I move this part here, you can see the lens actually comes off. The shutter is a leaf shutter and is here. You can see that leaf shutter there, where the aperture obviously is in the lens here. So you've got quite a complex mechanism here. Now, these leaf shutters were quite popular with a whole range of cameras, the Zeiss cameras, Fortlanders of this period. This was before we were beginning to see some focal planes in SLRs, but we also saw this popular use of the leaf shutter. Focusing is clearly at the front here. So just to go over the use of the camera, you decide on your shutter speed, then you decide on your aperture using this top and lining up the needle here and here. Once you have set your aperture, it's linked with the shutter speed. So when if you were deciding whether you wanted to go up a stop or down a shutter speed, the two are linked, which is very useful and was quite popular in the time of this camera. It's definitely got a nice solid fill. Once you've finished the film, how do you wind it back? You bring this up here, and you have a button to press there. So that is quite conventional. The slight difference of this, and to reset the counter, you have to press turn this here. So let's see how it turned out when I used this camera. For today's test, I went towards Wimborne in Dorset, and there's this great avenue of trees and this lane by the avenue of trees, and it wasn't the brightest of June days when I went here, but it was a good opportunity to test the camera. First of all, I tried it out on this sign, and the camera actually performs very well. I am using Formapan 100 film and developed in ID11. The camera, I'm using the on-board meter, and I was initially a little bit apprehensive of this funny turning knob on the front, on the top for the meter, but after using it a bit, I really got used to it. I think that's a little bit underexposed. However, on the whole, the exposure seemed to work quite well. The camera was sharp, it seemed to focus easily. I've got no issues with the lens. It seems to be fungus free. And as I said when I was explaining the camera, this is quite an interesting design of camera. It has a good lens. It's actually performed very well. Again, when you are using kit this age, you aren't always sure if the meter is going to work, but there was no problem with the meter here. And the shutter, as I said, is a leaf shutter, and with these type of cameras, the shutter is in the actual camera. It's not the... I didn't mention from my memory, the mirror doesn't automatically... The mirror resets when you wind the camera on. So, in hindsight, I was really pleased that I bought this camera. As I said, you never know quite what's going to turn up on the Dorchester car boot sale, and this was a good purchase, which I enjoyed using, and I might sell it or I might keep it and try another film. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.